Thank you.
Good morning. On behalf of our Board of Trustees and our Faculty Staff Senate and the entire institution, it's my privilege to welcome you to the State of the University address here on the campus of East Tennessee State University. I want to take a moment to thank and recognize the members of our Board of Trustees who are here today, to Melissa Stegall-Jones, Dr. Steph Fry-Clark, and to Trent White. Thank you for your leadership, for your service, and for the commitment that you have to this university. I also want to take a moment to thank my wife, Donna Noland, for her commitment to the institution and for her sacrifices over the course of the better part of a decade to serve the university. I also want to thank Dr. Mike Hoff. I'd like to thank Dr. Joe Chappell, and I'd like to thank Jess Fodden for their invaluable assistance in the preparation of today's material. As I walk through what is less than 120 slides, I promise you, we're going to focus on the following topics. I'm going to provide an overview of issue in the higher education landscape, we'll talk some about the institution, I'll provide an overview of student access and success, and then I want to close with stories of resilience, the mission of this institution lived in purpose. But this is Founders Week. Yesterday, 113 years ago, President Gilbreth gathered together with the first faculty of the institution and outlined our purpose, our function, and our mission. A mission to improve the quality of life for the people of the region. A mission that undergirds the strategic planning pillars that were approved by our Board of Trustees just a few short years ago. Strategic planning pillars that build on the work of the Committee for 125, both Chapters 1 and Chapters 2. Throughout today's presentation, I'll touch on progress in many of these planning areas. But I want to step back and first provide an overview of issues impacting higher education across the country. Recent work by McKinsey outlined 9 pressures facing the American system of higher education. Pressures in the space of enrollment, as we see the demographic cliff and downturns impacting competition for students on a national level. Affordability and costs remain a prime concern, but as a result of COVID, there's been significant learning loss and achievement gaps have been magnified. Our students are coming to our institutions with a complex set of demands and backgrounds. As a result, we as educators are having to reimagine and re-envision learning modalities, pedagogical structures, and the organizational structure of our institutions. Many universities are doubling down on their R&D investments, and those are elements that I'll touch upon today. So as we look at that enrollment environment, you're familiar with the challenges here, the demographic cliff, the complete debacle of the rollout to the FAFSA last year and the impact that it had on enrollment. But when students are looking at what elements that they listen to as they're making decisions about whether or not they should attend college, there's a lot of noise in that marketplace. That's why we as an institution put in place a strategic enrollment advisory plan that brings together both the academic side of the house and the marketing side of the house, so that as we're working with students, we're not just telling them about the institution, but we're preparing to serve them from the moment that they apply to the moment that they graduate and move into the workforce. But parents are getting a lot of their information from social media, which is increasingly negative. And that's one of the reasons why when you talk to Americans about the importance of college, the answer to that question is diverse and varied. But when you talk to students about what they're looking for in that decision to attend, what they're looking for is for stability, for predictability, and they're looking for the ability of their investments to be returned to provide a safe and stable environment for their and their families moving forward. But they're also looking for hands-on real-world experiences. That's what we've built into QEP. That's what we've built into the academic transformation of this institution. So as you see here, online learning and licensure courses, professional certificates, that's why we've restructured aspects of the institution to align with student demands and expectations. But once students have decided to go to college, if you ask them where they went and why they made that choice, location still remains one of the top variables, as does cost and affordability. But the beauty of the campus, the physical infrastructure, has increased in terms of student responses since EAB did this survey about a decade ago and their most recent administration. This validates the investments that we're making as a campus and that the board has made in the institution to transform our spaces. Now, I've shared this data with you time and time again, but I want to remind you of the important work that we're doing in the P20 space, the important work that we're doing in the outreach space, the work that we're doing in initiatives such as our Principal Leadership Corps, P20, healthcare pipelines to help address the college-going rate in the state of Tennessee. It's rebounded a little bit, but there's still significant gaps across the 3 grand divisions, and our college-going rate in this region trails the state average. But the gaps by demographic groups are significant, almost 14% by gender, more than 20% by race, and look at the 25% by income. And why is income important? Because when you ask students about elements that are of concern to them, cost remains a primary concern. And when you ask students about the benefits of that return on investment, cost remains a primary concern. But this was a little confusing to me, because if you adjust for inflation, college is actually more affordable now than it was a decade ago. Students are paying less out of pocket to go to college in 2023-24 than they were in 13-14. So this is the importance of us to focus on cost, to focus on financial aid, to focus on total net price, because irrespective of the investments that we make, the mantra in the general populace still is that college is unaffordable. But now let's dial back and look a little bit at the students, because if you remember those 9 themes, one of those themes was achievement gaps. On a 10-point scale, first-generation students rated their preparation from college at a 6.5. And if you look at the services that students rely upon increasingly when they enroll, 67% of all students relied upon advising services to help them along that path to a degree. So I've shared with you in prior presentations the learning gap from a measurable perspective, NAEP scores, ACT scores, et cetera. But when you survey students and students look at themselves in the mirror and reflect upon their preparation, they're stating they're not ready for college, which means we have more work to do to ensure that our students are successful upon enrollment. But the challenges that they're bringing with them are also extremely complex. When you ask students to define what makes a campus safe, for low-income students, the number one answer to that question is the availability of mental health support. So as we look at a changing student body, all of this has to be encapsulated as we're planning and preparing not only for today, but for the days and tomorrows to come. Now, each of you, if you're like me, I'm kind of boring. I wake up and the first thing I look at is the Chronicle for Higher Education. Probably the only person in the country who does that. But if you read the Chronicle, you're familiar with the pressures that are placed on higher education as it relates to finance. Pressures around escalating cost, both from a demand perspective, a labor perspective, a technology perspective, challenges related to enrollment as a result of the FAFSA, but then also declining numbers of students has made the marketplace extremely competitive. And when Forbes ranks bond rating capacity of institutions, the number of institutions with C and D ratings has more than doubled. And you've seen these stories. I'm not going to go into them one by one. Every day there's a story of an institution declaring financial exigency, laying off faculty, reducing academic programs. But look at the University of New Orleans. In 2003, they had 17,000 students. In 2023, they had 6,600 students. So that is a complete need to reimagine every portion of that university. So as I move through today, these are wonderful times at this institution. I said at the beginning of the fall, I've never been more excited for the start of a fall semester than I am this one, and that excitement continues to today. We have the wind at our sails, but all around us the wind is turbulent, and as we plan, we have to plan accordingly. So let's talk a little bit about the health of our university. Our university is in a strong position, in fact, the strongest position that it's been in the time that I've had the honor to serve as president. Minus auxiliaries, our budget's about $400 million all in. About 40% comes from tuition and fees, 40% from the state. And our single largest investment is in our people, in salaries. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to meet with the deans and share with them information that was distributed to the campus yesterday afternoon related to the close of last year's budget. I'm pleased to announce that we're continuing the commitment that the board charged us to maintain at its founding, which is to prepare for the rainy day. And we're putting $3.4 million in institutional reserves, which brings our total reserve position, unrestricted, to more than $30 million. But we're also passing back to our budget units almost $17 million in one-time resources. This is the budget model at work. And I know there are a lot of mixed opinions about the efficacy of our current budget model, but in prior iterations, all of that money would have stayed with Central. We're now passing that back to the units who've been wise stewards of their resources. But as we look at our resources, our revenue, the bulk of it, as referenced prior, comes from non-state sources. The bulk of those revenues are then invested in our people. But if you look at that from an operational perspective, the bulk of the investments overall go to support the student, teaching, research, and service enterprise of the institution as represented in functional classes. But there's one class at this campus that I have been worried about from the moment that I arrived, that I continue to be worried about today, and that's our class of employees, our faculty and staff. I'm a pretty competitive person, and there are two institutions that I like to compete against. Both of us are beating us, one by $3,000, the other by $9,000, and $2,000 and $9,000 again on the staff side. This is my top priority, to drive and improve faculty and staff salaries. So as you look at salaries over the course of the past 2 years, you see the action that our board took in 22-23 and the action that our board took in 23-24. We'll take to the board in November the following plan as it relates to faculty and staff salaries. And it's a two-phase plan, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this. First, in November, effective November 1, pending approval by the board, we'll implement a 3% across-the-board salary enhancement with a $7,000 floor, $7,000 ceiling, and a floor of $15 per hour. That will move 96 employees who are below $15 per hour above that threshold. That is phase one. Phase two will come in a series of steps. We took to the board in May adjustments to tuition and fees, recognizing the costs associated with changes to the Fair Labor Standards Act, changes that are being imposed upon the institution by the federal government. Prior to July 1, the cutoff for exempt employees was $35,000. Effective July 1, that cutoff moved to $43,000. If the next element of the proposed changes as outlined by the federal government become effective, that threshold for exempt employees moves to 58. So Lori Erickson and her staff will meet with division directors and deans over the course of the next few weeks to walk through with you by personnel line, job families, and individuals who are presently exempt, and you'll make the determination whether they remain in that status or transition to non-exempt. For those who move above that threshold, the first investment of this secondary pool will be to ensure compliance with the Fair Labor Standards Act. The second will be to implement our new classification and compensation system. Within a few short weeks, once again, staff from Human Resources will meet with deans and division directors to walk through on a person-by-person, job family by job family, job classification by job classification basis, the depiction and delineation of your employees to ensure that they are appropriately slotted in job descriptions and in job families. Once that work is done, that will then be matched against market salary data, and we'll invest in those individuals in those job families. It's job families and positions, not people. I want to clarify, it's job families and positions that are farthest from market. That will be the next phase of investments from the secondary pool. And then the third phase will be to make market adjustments for faculty salaries. All in, that is a 3% pool. So tranche one, 3% across the board. Tranche two, 3% towards market adjustments for faculty, staff, as well as the FLSA. In total, that's a 6% salary pool, which is the largest investment in salary in the history of this institution. But to address those market gaps, this is going to take a multi-year approach. This is not a one-year solution to what has been a decades-long challenge. So I thank the campus in advance for its efforts to roll up its sleeves, to examine opportunities to adjust resources, to make those adjustments in our people. Our story is a very different story than on the 3 slides worth of institutions that I shared prior, who are looking to make budget adjustments to cover budget shortfalls. I'm asking the campus to take a hard look at its budget so that savings that accrue can be invested in our people, our most valuable resource. But this is a resource that I know we're all excited about. That is one of the 3 largest freshman classes in the history of our university. 2,138 students who began their educational journey at East Tennessee State University this fall. You see the overall enrollment of the university, and you see the top programs in which those students have enrolled. And here's a picture of the freshman class. 2,138 students. Last year's freshman class, 2,141. Last year was the largest freshman class in the history of the university, but this is the only time in the history of the university in which we've surpassed the 2,100 threshold for freshmen. And I can't thank Dr. Heather Levesque, Dr. Joe Sherlin, and their staff for the work that they've done here, Jess Vodden and her team for the work that they've done here, and the provost and Christy Graham for the work that their staff has done. Because it's not any one entity that's brought these individuals to campus. It's the entire campus. It's our faculty who are at open houses in the Culp, upstairs in the ballroom, meeting with students and parents, passing along the joy that they have for their discipline to others. It's student clubs and organizations who gather at events all throughout the year when we roll out the blue carpet and talk about the transformative power of this university. So it's not any one entity that made this outcome possible. It's the entire campus, because we have an outstanding story to tell. As you look at enrollment overall, I'm pleased to note the rebound in international student enrollment. A number of years ago, there was a significant decline in this space due to changes in federal policy, and we all have had the opportunity and joy to see the hard-working grit and determination that these students bring to our institution and their willingness to overcome almost any financial obstacle to realize their dreams. You see the delineation of our enrollment by ethnicity group, but now let's compare us to the state. Noting this is preliminary enrollment data. This is data from the Tennessee Higher Education Commission that outlines both the size of the freshman class, 24 compared to 23, and then overall enrollment, 24 compared to 23. And you see there's some great difference across the three grand divisions of the state. The pressures for enrollment in each of those three grand divisions are different. But what's really different is if you step back and look historically at the enrollment picture in the state of Tennessee. So go back to 1984, when music was good. In 1984, you see enrollment across the state. You see enrollment in both what was the Board of Regents system, the community college system, and the University of Tennessee system. And now fast forward to the far right. The biggest change in the enrollment portfolio in the state of Tennessee is that the flagship institution, with change in leadership, began to follow the similar tactics that other flagship institutions are pursuing all across the South, and that's a growth strategy. And that growth strategy puts a fair amount of turbulence across the state's enrollment landscape. But I'm proud of the work that we've done here at East Tennessee State University to find a smooth path in the waters and to continue along our growth objectives. And that growth continues into next year. The enrollment projections that Dr. Hoff and Dr. Chappell have developed indicate that we'll be right around 14,400 students. So as we plan budgetarily for next year, this is a solid position to be in. All the more reasons why we as an institution should look to deepen our investments in our people. But those investments in people aren't just in salary. Those investments are in the most important people at this institution, and that's our students. Our retention rates have begun to rebound post-COVID, and we're moving back in the direction in which we were breaking records for retention year after year. Here's the retention rates and the variance by ethnicity. This undergirds the importance of the Moonshot Initiative that we implemented several years ago and are focused on ensuring that we reduce gaps across all backgrounds. Here's the comps to the state of Tennessee. And you notice these numbers move a little bit because this is start at ETSU, stay at ETSU. This is start at ETSU, return to any institution. So about a 7% bump. When you factor that in, we're meeting the threshold that the board set of an 80% retention rate. And here's our graduation rates. Once again, moving back in the direction that we would anticipate, but we still have work to do to get to the board's goal of a 60% graduation rate. And here's how our grad rates compare to institutions across the state. But here's how those grad rates by institution break out on demographics. Once again, undergirding the importance of the work that we're doing within the space of Moonshot to ensure that all students, regardless of background, have the opportunity to realize their dreams and receive a degree. So I want to drill in on a few strategic initiatives. This is the planning framework that's outlined within the strategic plan that was approved by the board. And one of the areas that is of significant importance to the board is that of research. I want to thank all of the faculty, and I want to thank Dr. Nick Hagemeyer for his leadership. That is a record for externally sponsored awards at this institution. But look at what we've done here. Almost a twofold increase in research expenditures. This is an element of distinction for the institution. Our goal is to be a preeminent R2 institution, and these investments are positioning us to do so. When you leave today, you'll have an opportunity to pick up this report, which spotlights outstanding work of our faculty across a variety of areas. But these are areas that, from my perspective, are exemplary. Faculty who have gone above and beyond, not only to meet the mission of the institution, but to embark upon a research endeavor that not only will change the face of this region, but has the potential to change the face in their discipline-specific areas for the nation. Earlier this fall at faculty convocation, we highlighted the work of these three individuals, our faculty who are recognized by their peers for excellence in teaching, research, and service. And Dr. Tom Quasagro will give the commencement address to the graduating class this upcoming December. This is one that I want to take a moment and ask you all to just absorb. We've been working on this for more than a decade to be recognized by the Chronicle as a great college to work for. And this fall, we received that designation. This was a strategic planning goal of the institution. We surpassed the Carnegie class in almost every single area. And this isn't the work of something that my office or the provost's office or any office did. This is culture. This is shared governance. This is the willingness to make hard decisions together. This is the willingness to recognize that all of us make mistakes and to ask for forgiveness when we make mistakes. But this is what we've worked hard to build at an institution, and we've been working at it for decades. And I'm extremely pleased that it has been recognized by the Chronicle that East Tennessee State University is one of the great colleges in America to work for. But our strategic plan contains more than just that one goal. There's sheets worth of goals in the plan, and I won't get into this in detail. This is more for you to look at when you get back to your desk today and in the days to come. But each element with a checkbox next to it is one of the strategic plans that we have already achieved. And here's the second set of those achievements. But I want to pull away from that box and focus on a couple of areas in which there's significant work underway across campus. I mentioned the budget model earlier. No budget model is perfect. No budget model is perfect. The only one that would be perfect is if I controlled all the revenue and I got to divvy out the way I wanted. That'd be perfect in my mind, but not perfect for anyone else. We went by design to a decentralized budget model in the middle of the last decade. We're moving through the process of modernizing that budget model. That work is underway. That work will be implemented and ready to go as we move into the new calendar year. We've talked a lot on this campus over the course of the past 2 years about our Oracle transition, the Voyager, moving from more than a couple decade-old banner system to a new state-of-the-art cloud-based system. I want to thank the units across campus that have been involved in this work, from finance to IT to HR. They spent more than 18 months getting ready to move and to go live on a system, but they made the hard call that we weren't ready. Not only did they make the hard call that we weren't ready, they made the hard call that the partner we were working with was not capable of moving us to implementation. And we paused and started over again. That was not an easy decision, but it was the right decision. And that decision is going to ensure that when we do go live, that the system we build serves the institution for decades to come. This will transform the operations of the university. And I thank everyone in the room for your patience as we move through this process. We want to get it right rather than getting it fast. Embedded is the work to enhance class and comp. Our classification and compensation system dates back to the Board of Regents. Lori Erickson and her team are completely transforming the structure of class and comp, moving to a new conceptualization of job families with broader salary bands. This will allow managers in the room, deans and unit leaders, to make sure that your staff, your hardworking staff, are able to receive the salary enhancements that they need rather than going through the archaic process of stipends and workarounds that you've utilized for a couple decades. This work will go live, and Lori and her team will start meeting with you over the course of the next few weeks and month to move through the process of getting this moving. But one process that is moving is the restructure of the institution's academic portfolio. And I want to thank all of the individuals who were involved in that work and the two chairs, Dr. Foley and Dr. Hagemeyer, for their leadership. Not only is that progress moving forward, but the provost and I had the opportunity yesterday to meet with all the school directors, and the excitement about the opportunity to grow in an interdisciplinary manner in each of the new schools was palpable. As we look at our enrollment plan, this is more than an enrollment plan, it's a success plan. And I'm pleased to announce that as we move forward through the fall and into the spring, when we start next fall, we will have a one-stop shop for students, bringing together offices such as enrollment, financial aid, bursar, and the registrar to ensure that when students enroll at this institution, they can go to one place with one point of service to get their questions answered rather than having to navigate all across the institution. But it's more than just a one-stop from an enrollment perspective. We will also, within the next year, implement a comprehensive student success center that will ensure that all students, regardless of background, all students, particularly first-generation students, have a comprehensive and one-stop location that they can go to for services from advising to mental health to engagement to belonging in one place. We will also implement a series of adjustments to our financial aid programs that will allow us to make investments in first-generation students and underserved students so that cost for them is no longer part of the equation. You've seen the work that we're doing in research, but there's also work underway in housing. I want to thank the work of our staff and facilities. I know Laura Bailey and her team are here today. For those of you who had the opportunity to tour Powell prior to the ribbon cutting, it's beautiful. You took a building that had great bones but needed a little bit of love and brought it to life. We will replicate that model in Stone, and we will replicate that model in Yoakley. The university is investing $2 million in resources to help with the transformation to Yoakley, which is on top of resources we made last year to ensure that when Yoakley moves, it moves quickly, because it's faster to renovate a building than it is to build a new residence hall. And as we saw this fall, with 3,300 students, a record number of students wanting to live in the residence halls, there's overwhelming demand for students to be on this campus and have this campus experience. I want to thank the work of the faculty who have been involved in the complete transformation of the Gen Ed core. That work is well underway, and more than 100 courses have been approved for the new campus core curriculum. Earlier, I referenced what students are looking for when they make the decision to go to college: a hands-on experience with real-world impact. That's at the center of the campus core curriculum, and it aligns with student expectations. I referenced the work here on academic structure prior, but I want to congratulate the faculty, the leadership, and the staff, and all of the units that had successful programmatic accreditation visits and approvals in the past year. And almost every single one of these had no findings at all. This is exemplary work, and it's a peer certification and validation of the quality of the faculty and of the teaching and research that occurs at this institution. We've got new programs on the horizon. This is just a glimpse of a few that we've approved and a few that are coming. We will build out engineering at this university, and we will look to build out other programs with a technical orientation that align with workforce needs. But let's step back for a second, because there's more that is happening on this campus from a physical renovation and rebirth and reimagination than words can begin to describe. But we built a master plan that attempted to capture it all and describe it all. And that was a master plan from a facilities perspective that linked back to the academic plan. And over the course of about 2 years, outside consultants have been engaging with the campus to structure that plan that aligns with 125 to ensure that as we look to renovate and build new buildings, that they're meeting the academic needs of the institution. Our Board of Trustees approved that at their last meeting. It will go to University Council later this month, then in November to the Tennessee Higher Education Commission for approval, and ultimately to the State Building Commission for approval. But a couple things that are in that plan that I know we're all excited about. First is Brown Hall. We've received Phase 1 funding for Brown Hall, and we are actively working to ensure that we tell the story of the need for Phase 2 in a pretty aggressive way. I've had multiple legislators tour the building over the course of the past few weeks, including one day when we were going through the building and a steam pipe had burst behind the walls and steam was pouring out of all the cabinets. Whoever in facilities set that up for me, thank you. It made for a great visual. But we're hopeful that we're able to receive Phase 2 funding for Brown. And yesterday, the State Building Commission approved the architectural aspects of this building, and it will now be underway. So 2 brand new buildings that meet the modern needs of the institution over the course of the decade and decades to come. But when you look at this in a holistic perspective, we're creating an experience for our student that touches upon multiple themes. We've restructured advising. We've built the Martin Center, this beautiful building that provides cultural opportunities for our students in ways that were not available prior to its arrival. I've referenced the growth in research, the work that Dr. Block and his team are leading to provide healthcare access for our students, the work that's occurring in student services and financial aid. This is not one area alone. It's a concerted effort by the entire institution to ensure that we're meeting the needs of our students from the point of arrival all the way to the point of completion. But I now want to shift gears because it wouldn't be appropriate if we didn't recognize the work of this institution to respond to the horrific tragedy and devastation that was Hurricane Helene. As you look at what happened at this institution over the course of the past couple of weeks, what happened wasn't a grand plan that was designed by the Office of the President. What happened was organic, coming from the bottom up, our people working around the clock to meet the needs of our community. Within hours of learning of the extent of the devastation, Dr. Michelle Bird and Brittany Deaver put together a plan in which they contacted students, called students, emailed students, texted students to ensure that they were safe and that they had the things that they needed. And they began to quickly put together a step through which we would ensure that meals were provided, housing was provided, and financial assistance was provided to those students with need. But it wasn't just staff, it was our student leaders. I cannot thank our student leaders enough for the work that they did. On Friday, after we began to get a sense of the extent of the damage of the storms, I was on the phone with student leaders who were asking, what can we do? And I said, well, there's hard to even begin to describe where to start. Well, they knew where to start. They gathered together on their own Saturday and spent hours in the CULP developing a plan of response. So to Hunter Turgeon, Trent White, and Skylar Brackett, thank you for your leadership in the SGA, but to all of our students, thank you for what you did. You totally restructured homecoming and moved the homecoming activities towards activities of service. The largest blood drive in the history of this region, you put together in days. And the elements that are described on this slide were done in the matter of moments by student leaders all across this campus. And I can tell you, when I walked into the CULP on that Monday and saw the lines at the blood drive, many of our students waited more than 6 hours in line to give blood. And it wasn't just students, I saw faculty and staff there as well. I had to walk out in the hall and collect myself because I don't know if I've ever been more moved by the image that I saw in the CULP that day of our students waiting in line to give. But they've also given back. Our student athletes got back into the community and gave and served. Students across all of the colleges got back into the community and gave and served. But there's a faculty member in particular that I'd like to spotlight, Dr. Felipe Fusa, who, if you saw in the news coverages, was there as the translator in Unicoi, translating to communities who had been impacted in ways that I can't even begin to describe, to ensure that they had at least some visibility around what was occurring to their families and loved ones. I can't imagine the pressure and stress that Dr. Fusa felt, but if any of you see him on campus, please take a moment to thank him for the service that he gave, service to the people of this region, service to communities that quite often are overlooked and undervalued, communities in this region that are going to need our help more than ever. But an element that is going to need our help now and in the days to come is from a healthcare perspective. And all of the colleges within ETSU Health, from the Gatton College of Pharmacy to the Quillen College of Medicine, have been out and engaged, providing needed medicines such as insulin to those in need, as well as providing home visits to patients in impacted communities. I was told a story yesterday of the work that our family medicine clinics had engaged in, doing home visits. If they knew that an individual had need, they visited their home. But when they made calls, if a person didn't answer the phone, they made a welfare check to check on their patients. That's the level of personalized care that we're giving at ETSU Health. But that person-to-person commitment to mission is what makes this university distinctive and special. As we look at the work that we're doing across the areas of research, but more importantly, expertise, I want to thank Dr. Allison Barton for the work that they have done in the Teaching and Learning Center to put together packets of information and prescriptive text that faculty can use as they make adjustments to the manner in which they deliver courses or serve students. Proactive work that Dr. Barton and her team did. Dr. Andrew Joyner has been out in the field for weeks mapping the devastation. That mapping will benefit our region as we look to receive matching funds from FEMA as we move forward in the recovery phase. But we've also stepped forward and served. Sodexo has donated more than 800 meals through the Salvation Army to individuals that are in need. But one of the things we've learned over the past week, as Dr. Bird has shared with me care report after care report, more than 200 care reports, is that our students have needs. So I'm pleased to announce that earlier this week, we redirected $300,000 worth of university resources to our student assistance and student crisis funds to help serve the needs of our students during this time. This one, you just can't even begin to describe. For hours, day after day after day, our students stood in the culp and wrote notes of thanks and appreciation to impacted families and first responders. 1,600 handwritten letters went out into this community. And you see that that was picked up by more than 125 television stations across the globe and has had 31 million views. But what comes next? What comes next? I want to take a couple moments on this slide because there are things that we need to do and things that we will do, because the recovery is not short-term. This is a marathon, not a sprint. I want to thank Dr. Bonnie Burchett for the work that she and her staff in housing have done to identify available rooms for faculty, staff, and students. For students who were impacted by the hurricane, we will make rooms available to you at no cost to come to campus to help finish the semester. For faculty and staff, we have identified efficiency apartments on campus. Now, these aren't fancy, but they've got a refrigerator and a stove, and it would be a place for you to have a touchdown point if your home has been damaged during the storms or if your travel is now made impossible because of the storms. So for those faculty and staff who need university assistance in this space, please reach out to your supervisor so that need can be elevated to Dr. Sherlin and myself so that we can make these spaces available to you and your families. Because the commute across the mountain has now been doubled in time, and we want to ensure that we're doing all we can to bring resources to bear to help you so that you can be here to continue your teaching, research, and service mission. But on that service mission, I'm pleased to announce that we will provide to every faculty and staff member 15 hours of service time for you to get out in the community and give back between now and the close of the year. You'll not have to take annual leave or sick leave to serve. The details of this are still being worked through, but HR will provide details around how this will be actualized later next week. But for those who want to serve, this will be an opportunity for you to get back and not have to take away from your annual or sick leave. So I want to wrap up, and I want to wrap up with a couple of elements. To recap, our budgets are balanced. We're putting money in reserves. We're building buildings. We're increasing our housing stock. We have the largest freshman class in the history of the university, the largest number of students living on campus in the history of the university, the largest investment in research in the history of the university. We're recognized as a great college to work for. This institution is in solid shape, but it's not in solid shape because of anything that an individual has done. It's in solid shape because of the collective and the collective effort of individuals over decades. And I want to spotlight Doug Taylor. Everybody knows Doug Taylor. He's a legend on this campus. A couple days ago, we celebrated Doug's 50th year of service to the university. Every single student who's ever been admitted to the Quillen College of Medicine was admitted by Doug. And there was this wonderful video that played of an alum describing how Doug had reached out to he in a time of need and helped him navigate the path to Quillen. There's an alum who's in the room who talked about his interview with Doug Taylor. But if you were to go back to this region prior to the creation of a College of Medicine, we celebrated our 50th anniversary of Quillen this year, there were systemic healthcare needs across the region. Half of the physicians who operate in the region that we call home were trained at Quillen in one way or another. Every single one of them were touched by Doug. So for those of you who've had children delivered at Niswonger, Doug played a role in that. For those of you who had family members who overcome a fight with cancer and were treated by an oncologist who was trained here, he had a role in that. That's an impact over generations. And what I'm proud of most at this institution is not our outcomes, but our people. Our people over the course of the 2.5 weeks that we've moved through demonstrated the mission and culture of this institution better than any PowerPoint slide presentation ever could. So I want to say thank you to the people of this institution for what you have done to live our mission and for what you will do to live our mission. Our mission has remained unchanged for 113 years, and I hope it never changes, because this region has been transformed by you and the people that you work with. Thank you for all that you do for East Tennessee State University. Thank you for all that you do for this region. Godspeed to each of you, and go Bucs.